In this video, I'm going to make the skirt that wraps around the base of the stand, and I'm going to make the retracting caster system that's enclosed inside the skirt. To make the front skirt with the slot for the Extend Retract Lever, I just cut the piece of plywood so I could create a 7/8 of an inch slot. And glued a piece of hardwood to the top and the bottom. I've mitered each end of these at a 45 degree, and what I'm going to do now is round over the top outer edge of the skirt. For 3 corners on the skirt, I'm using number 20 biscuits to reinforce the joints. I suppose you could use splines, nails, screws, but I'm going to use my biscuit tool. I've set the fence at 45 degrees, and I'm using a little spacer block to line up the biscuit cutting tool sideways, and I'll use the same spacer block for the other joints. I'm not going to cut a biscuit slot in the miter where the slot for the Extend Retract pedal is. There's just not room for this for a biscuit. So what I'm going to do is drill in 2 or 3 dowels from the front to strengthen this corner using the skirt. A couple of picture framing clamps to hold the 4 skirt pieces together while the groove at each corner's sets. I used some rubber band to just hold the pieces in place temporarily while I got the picture frame clamps on. To reinforce the 4th corner of the skirt, I'm going to drill in 3 dowels. And my technique for doing that is to drive the dowels in with the drill, add a little glue to the dowel, drive it home, and when the dowel is bottomed, just cut it with a knife. One down and 2 to go. These are the floating boards in the skirt, underneath the skirt, under the base of the cabinet, that carry the retracting casters. We need to screw to the underside of these boards the casters and a pair of hinges. So I'm going to use a scrap piece of 1/8 inch plywood to space these 2 panels while I mark for the hinges, and then I'll mark for the casters. I'm spacing the casters about 1 inch from the edge. an inch or 25 millimeters. And then I'm going to drill pilot holes for the hinge screws and the caster screws. Excuse me. Stop so it doesn't go right through. The base skirt just slips over the bottom edge of the main cabinet, just far enough to cover the floor piece of plywood. And then inside what I call the caster pivot blocks, a couple of strips by which I'm going to attach the base to the main cabinet. Screws up into the floor and screws out into the skirt pieces. One strip at the back and one at the front. I've got the cabinet upside down here with the base skirt slipped over the cabinet, and I'm just preparing the pivot blocks for the casters. And I can see the first modification to the plans that's going to become necessary. The floor isn't going to allow the extend lever all the way to the top of the slot. So I'm going to have to remove some material from the floor to give the extend retract lever full travel. I'm going to have to remove some material from here. Well, with a back saw, wood chisel and rasp, I've removed a notch here from the underside of the floor. And it should give me full travel, almost full travel of the track lever. The pivot blocks need to be rounded over a little bit, and just a few strokes of the plate should do that. To position the caster pivot blocks inside the skirt, I'm just using a scrap of plywood the same thickness as the bottom of the cabinet as a spacer, and holding the pivot blocks tightly against the spacer, I'm just going to install a couple of screws. Front and back. And then before I glue and screw these in finally, I'm going to test the caster. I've bolted a pedal arm to the rear caster board, and I need to check that the casters extend and retract satisfactorily. With the pedal up, and we're upside down, with the pedal up, the caster should be retracted. And with the pedal down, the casters are extended and should hold the cabinet about a 1/4 inch or almost a centimeter off the floor. I'll install these pivot blocks with glue and screws driven home. Installed a couple of hardwood blocks, front and rear, to retain the caster mounting boards